Number 10 on the list is Blood Plus. This is one of the shows that anime fans of my generation would have probably heard of in their teen years. Blood Plus is about Saya, seemingly your ordinary girl, plus the anemia and amnesia, who gets attacked by a chiropteran, bat-like humanoid monsters. Luckily for her, Haji comes to the rescue and lets her drink his blood, awakening powers within her and turning her into a monster-killing machine. Peculiarities continue occurring around her, and she soon learns of Red Shield, a secret organization founded for the sake of dealing with those beasts. After all these years, I'm honestly not sure how well Blood Plus's premise and plot would have aged, which is why I placed it pretty low on this list. However, it remains one of my teen favorites, and I think that it helped ease me into a lot of shows in this genre. If you're up for a quick monster-slaying fix with some badass characters, do check this one out. The 50 episodes are definitely worth it. We move on with High School of the Dead at number 9. Coming off the zombie craze at the start of the previous decade, do you remember that? This is our next entry. Fan service galore, a lot of blood, and loads of zombies. Sums up High School of the Dead pretty well. In High School of the Dead, Japan gets thrown into total chaos overnight with the start of a zombie apocalypse. As a school gets overrun, our protagonist Takashi is forced to escape with Rei, the girlfriend of his friend that he had to unfortunately execute. What awaits them outside is a society that's been taken over by the living dead. Thankfully, they have allies on their side. Joining them is a band of other student survivors, but will their ragtag group have what it takes to survive this nightmare? One look at the opening and the poster can pretty much give you an idea of what to expect. Now, as I said before, the show is fan service galore, but it's also filled with some nice action sequences and a genuinely interesting setting and world. It can be quite mindless in its approach and how it throws guns and fan service at you, but if you're someone who's in for those, this show will definitely tickle your fancy. Next up is a movie from the year 2000. Vampire Hunter D: Bloodlust, if you know it, got a movie at the start of the millennium, and it didn't disappoint. The story revolves around the titular D, a renowned vampire hunter born of the holy union between vampire and human. His next task has him on a rescue mission to save the young noblewoman Charlotte Elborn. The bounty for his task is huge, and the hunt is on, even with mysterious forces acting in the background. This rescue mission also seems to be more than it looks at first glance, and perhaps D has accepted a quest that even a hunter like him can't handle. Vampire Hunter D: Bloodlust is a gripping movie, and I found myself enjoying every single bit of it. Now, at first glance, it gave me some Van Helsing and Castlevania vibes. I'd say that my first impressions aren't that far off actually, but the movie still has its unique points, especially in the character development that gets done in such a short plot. Not to mention how good its animation is for the time it was released. It has a good blend of suspense and action, and you might want to watch this for your Halloween movie fix. Seventh in line is Arjin. Superpowered beings living alongside regular humans has been a recurring theme in anime, or media in general for that matter. Oftentimes they come into conflict with the more mundane and ordinary residents of the world, and those conflicts can end up being quite brutal. Arjin brings us to that world, where after getting run over by a truck, Kei, instead of waking up in another world, awakes as an Arjin. The problem? Arjin have high bounties over their heads, and Kei finds himself being betrayed by all that he knew with the exception of his lone friend. Together the two make a run for it and come in contact with the hidden society of Arjin. However, it turns out that Arjin aren't really the nicest people around, especially after years of abuse and being ostracized. Giving me some serious Tokyo Ghoul vibes here, Arjin for me is quite the nice dark fantasy story that presents an interesting battle of ideals. It's got some cool social commentary that you can take note of, sprinkled atop the narrative that's filled to the brim with action and suspense. Next is a cult classic, Elfen Lied. One of the often talked about classics is Elfen Lied. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is one anime that often appears in random recommendations, but for good reason too. Elfen Lied talks of Lucy, a special breed of human who escapes from a research facility. During the breakout, she gets shot and gets left with a split personality. Later, two university students stumble upon her and decide to take her home. However, trouble pursues the students as they have to deal with not only government agencies going after Lucy, but of their new companion's traumatic past and dark split personality. When it comes to Elfen Lied, there are lots of things to like about it. You can say that it's a show with ample doses of mutant action, split personalities, nudity, sudden mood swings, and loads of gore. Yes, this is a show that would have been censored to hell and back under today's standards, but it's one of the most enduring action horror shows in anime history, and for good reason too. We continue with an oldie but goodie, Akira. Akira, the anime movie that's long been credited as the one that brought anime past the borders of Japan and into the West. One of the pioneers of anime, Akira still holds up quite well today. Set in a Tokyo that's been rebuilt from the ashes of a Third World War, Akira puts us in a city rife with crime and corruption. Caught in a battle between biker gangs, a youth named Tetsuo gets taken into custody along with one of the people seen exhibiting superpowers. As things would have it, Tetsuo's powers also awaken and it drives him insane, leading him to break away from the lab in a warpath. It's up to his friend Kaneda to stop him. One of the most controversial and beloved anime movies to have ever been made, Akira is a movie that delves into psychology, sci-fi, and horror. It's one of those overly violent titles that aren't for the faint of heart, but it provides its fair share of bloodbaths. Overall, Akira gives the complete experience that would surely enrich anyone watching it. And hey, it did convince people decades ago that anime is a medium to be taken seriously.
Nani?
Up for some more vampire action? Well, we've got one more for this list, and I saved the best for last. In Great Britain, there exists an organisation that protects people from monsters that prey upon people. The organisation, aptly named Helsing, is led by Integra and his star operative, the vampire Alucard. Standing against them is the rival organisation, the Catholic Church, and the enigmatic Father Anderson. Caught in all of this is a survivor of a police squad who becomes a vampire herself, and joining Helsing, the organisation uncovers a plot of apocalyptic proportions that threatens the world. Amazing animation, great fights, unrelenting violence, some of the best showcases of powers in anime. What more could you ask for in a fantasy horror series? Helsing is one of the most popular series of the genre. It's something better watched than read, so go ahead and start watching it now. Standing in our runner-up spot in second place is Berserk. When it comes to horror and unrestrained violence, I find few shows capable of holding a candle to Berserk in that regard. Of course, I'm talking about the 1997 Berserk, not the recent one that had its fair share of online popcorn. Berserk is the story of Guts, an orphan who embraces the battlefield, fighting for his life day after day. His life takes a huge turn after his run-in with the Band of the Hawk, a mercenary group led by the charismatic Griffith. Joining the group as a formidable new ally, Guts quickly realizes the world isn't as simple as he thought it was. After all, bloodshed and strength aren't everything in this grim world. What more needs to be said about Berserk? Starring one of the most badass and outright brutal protagonists out there, there is a reason why the series has become a classic that stood the test of time. Do take note though, the anime does have some heavy modifications in order to tone down the violence, but I think it's a decent adaptation overall, unlike the latest one. Topping off yet another list is Parasite. I think when it comes to combining action and its signature style of body horror, few titles can come close to Parasite. For those of you who don't know about the series, Parasite is basically a show about an alien invasion. Only this time, they don't come in spaceships or look like those green or grey men we've come to know aliens for. Instead, these organisms come in the form of parasites that latch onto humans and possess them, turning them into transformative monsters with an appetite for human flesh. Thankfully, our protagonist Shinichi was able to stop a hostile takeover over, but in exchange, said parasite gets stuck in his hand. The parasite, called Migi, comes to life as his transforming hand, and the duo gets forced to put aside their differences in order to survive the crapsack world where fellow parasites are on the hunt for them. Combining philosophical themes, some serious violence, high-octane action, and some really funky music, Parasite is probably one of the shows that I'd eagerly, blindly recommend to someone who hasn't watched anime at all. I think that after all of these years, the original story from the manga that's over 3 decades old still holds up strongly. Definitely put this on your watch list if you want to watch some action horror anime. Well, I guess that's more than enough anime for you to enjoy in the upcoming Halloween week. Which ones are you most excited about? Which ones have you already seen? And how did you find them? Please share your thoughts and sentiments down in the comment section below, and we can have fun chatting about anime and other cool